I want to start off by talking about the Trump visit, obviously, because it's just been confirmed as we were coming in here. It's obviously something I imagine you are very supportive of.
Yeah, a bit late.
Yeah.
Hell of a long time coming. I mean, if you think about it, we have the upset of Brexit, the upset in that it wasn't expected by most people, and following on from that, Trump, which a little bit of a bow away from Brexit helped there, I believe. But we have an American president who likes this country, who is half British, who supported Brexit, who said, really early on, hey, there's so much more we can do together in trade, etc. So I thought there was this amazing opportunity for the Atlantic to get a bit narrower. And it hasn't. It just hasn't. And of course, the non-visit from Trump, well, partly it's to do with the virtue signalling of our own political establishment. I mean, the Speaker of the House of Commons for 800 years has been neutral. Not this lot. Not John Bercow. Give some ridiculous speech about why he would stop President Trump setting foot on the parliamentary estate. Then we got the Mayor of London, who's obsessed with Trump. Knife crime doesn't seem to be as important to him. God knows why. We've just overtaken New York in the murder league.
I guess him being a Muslim probably has a...
Yes, but again, you see, I mean, I think the way that's all been portrayed, come on, it was Obama that put into place huge restrictions on people coming into America from 7 countries. In a sense, the early stuff that Trump was doing was actually following on a policy that Obama had started. But we get this narrative that Obama good, Trump bad, and so much that springs from that. So I think it's regrettable. I think, Mrs. May has said some negative things about him, under pressure. The British ambassador, well, there's no point in them even meeting. Sir Kim is a great globalist. None of that work. So we've really squandered the opportunity, and I think, I'm sure to the American administration, the idea they turn up in London and the Labour Party organise 100,000 protesters, it's kind of not the optics they want. So good for Macron, that's all I can say. Stolen a march on us, Bastille Day, red carpet rolled out for the president. We are looking flat-footed, to say the very least. So, hey, I'm pleased at last he's coming. It'll be a working visit, from what I can understand. Better late than never.
You mentioned the word globalist. I'm just interested in that. I mean, what do you mean by globalist?
Oh, I mean those that support nation-state handing up to higher levels of authority the ability to do the normal things that nation-states have always done, such as make their own laws, have their own courts, control their own borders. And I think, to be honest with you, that's actually at the heart of this, the whole debate that's happening across the West. Either you believe in the nation-state or you believe in the higher global order. And that, to me, now is the defining point of everything.
But isn't Macron a globalist?
Yes.
He's called a globalist.
Yes, oh, absolutely. I mean Macron is, hugely pro the European project. He's calling for many more powers to be centralised in Brussels, powers taken from the member states. So, yeah, I completely disagree with him on that. I mean, in many ways, he's the European Union's last hope. He's the only good result they've had in the last 2 years. All the other results have been horrible.
And, of course, you had lunch with him recently, so how did that go?
I did, yeah. He came to the European Parliament. I'd not met him before, so I met him and chatted with him. Very personable. Interesting, actually. Speaks with a lot of passion. He's an operator.
Right.
He is an impressive operator. He's also doing some things in France that are really quite interesting. He's taking on the trade unions.
Yeah.
And he's looking to try and reform taxes, to stop sending a message to big earners that the best thing to do is leave France. So there's an interesting combination of things that he's doing. But I think on the big European stuff, I think he's barking up the wrong tree. I think they all are. I think if you look at everything from Italy to Hungary to what's happening, I believe that the Brexit-Trump phenomenon of 16, that revolution is still rolling.
It's interesting to hear you link Brexit and Trump, and of course that link has been made many times, but I mean, do you think that Trump could have been elected without Brexit?
I think Brexit was a tremendous help. I think Brexit sent a message that, even if on the eve of poll, the Huffington Post tell you there's a 98.1% chance of Hillary winning, just ignore it and go out and vote for what you want. If it's change you want, go out and do it. So, yeah, I think Brexit did make a difference. I also think Brexit had an astonishing effect on America. I mean, I just can't believe you know, there I was at Cleveland. I went over for the Republican conference, you know, their adoption of Trump as the candidate. And I'd wanted to go to one for 40 years. For 40 years, I watched the balloons, the ticker tape, thought, wow, this looks really exciting. And I was just stunned in Cleveland that, you know, taxi drivers, people in the bars, the restaurants would say, hey, you're the Brexit guy. So how's that all working out? And some thought, yeah, you should have done this years ago. Others thought, wow, but, you know, isn't it? People were genuinely interested. And we kind of get this impression often that people in America don't care what's happening in the rest of the world. Well, certainly with Brexit, that was not the case.
I find that interesting, actually, because in the UK, of course, you've said, I mean, I've read pieces where you've said that you've had problems with people being quite nasty to you on the street or whatever because of what happened in Brexit. Is that still the...
Oh, that started back in 2013.
Right.
You know, if you challenge the establishment, and by God, I did challenge the establishment on a number of, not just on the European question or borders, but on a number of policy areas. If you directly challenge the establishment, and if you help to set up and build a vehicle that starts to take votes away from them in insignificant numbers, you know, they don't exactly come out with a tray of drinks for you.
No.
And so what we've had here is, in soccer terms, you know, going for the man and not the ball. So rather than dealing with an argument that I might make on the television, on the radio, in the European Parliament, wherever, rather than coming back and trying to counter the argument, oh, Farage says this because he's an extremist. I've been called everything, actually, homophobe, I mean, everything. List as long as your arm.
Islamophobe, have you been called that?
Oh, yes. Oh, God, yes. Thank God. I'd be very upset if that wasn't on the list. And now anti-Semite. I've never been called anti-Semite, but now I have because I attacked George Soros. So I think I've got the royal flush now of terms of abuse. And when you really think about it, actually, the things I was campaigning for were far from extreme. They were very in my view, sensible ways of reordering what we do. So yes, we have finished up with a percentage of the population hating me because they've been told this is what this guy stands for. So that's been difficult, and I haven't had that in America.
Right.
I mean, I have had abuse hurled at me walking up Fifth Avenue, but I haven't felt physically intimidated in America in a way that I have, sadly, in this country.
Interesting you mentioned anti-Semite. I mean, I don't think it was just the Soros stuff. It was also your comment on LBC about...
Yeah, dealing with a virulently anti-Semitic caller.
The Jewish lobby.
Yeah, the anti-Semitic caller who said, well, I don't think it was the Russians that influenced it, it was the Jews. The Jews got Trump elected, to which I say, well, there is a Jewish lobby and it's well organised and they're very professional, but not for one moment do I think they influenced the election result.
So it was taken out of context?
Wildly.
Yeah.
You know, wildly. Now, as I say, you know, given that I had people like Richard Desmond and some other very prominent Jewish people who've supported me in UKIP with money and resources over many years, that was the only term of abuse that had never been thrown at me. But as I say, we've got the lot now.
Yeah. When you went to the US, it made me think of David Miliband, strangely, who kind of left here having lost the Labour leadership to his brother, and then went out to America to kind of make something of himself. In Miliband's case, he hasn't come back. Now, talking about the fact you were unpopular here, maybe on the streets or whatever.
No, I'm wildly popular here.
Right.
I'm probably the most popular political figure.
So it wasn't like making
There
a
are
pitch
millions
for
of people out there that love me and want to buy me a drink and want photographs and won't let me be without talking to me or having selfies. But equally, you know, there is, and it's more of an urban phenomenon than it is a small market town or rural phenomenon, but it is in the big cities where life is quite difficult. Yeah.
Tell me what you're up to in America. Just give us a kind of what you were doing. You were talking at some universities, I believe.
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting. One of the things that really I don't get is what I see as the assault on critical thinking through much of our educational establishments. You know, namely, here's an issue or a problem. Here are two alternative ways of approaching that problem. They're both perfectly viable opinions, and you know, you're 20 years old. You're big enough and ugly enough to make your own mind up and work out what your view is. That is what classic critical thinking has been about, and I sense there's far less of that now.
There's no platforming kind of culture, you mean?
Yeah. Here's a problem. Here's one view, which is really nice and cuddly, and if you have this view, you're almost a Nazi, and that's been going on. So, safe spaces, no platforming, a lot of that going on in universities here, America. So when by chance, some people in Colorado put this plan to me that I would debate against the former Mexican president, Vicente Fox, who, is a bit of a character and really good fun. And we'd tour around some universities. I really jumped at the chance. I thought it was a really good thing to do. Interesting. The last university we spoke at, when we got there, the security said, well, there is a protest going on outside. Fine. So we're just going to get you in through this door. And, normally with these things, it's about conflict avoidance. Tell you what was funny, it wasn't the students protesting, it was the professors. I can let you have the pictures, holding up their boards, no to Farage, no to bigotry. And I thought, wow, that's where the problem is. Everything I'd thought about the way young people are being taught in educational establishments was really borne out to me on that day. So we've got a big problem with this, and it needs to change.
Mm. Are you a bigot?
No.
Are you Islamophobic?
No. Actually, I'm not sure I've been called that. It's worrying, isn't it? No, I'm not. As I say, my agenda actually is a very normal agenda. I mean, I was in business, and I'd supported Margaret Thatcher's modernisation and reforms of the economy. It was painful for some people, but it had to happen. And it really did bring us into it brought us into the modern world. I worked in a very global business, the most global business of the lot. Very few tariffs, unless you imported aluminum into Europe, and then there were tariffs. But no, I mean, I do believe in the nation state as a model. I do believe in a system where the people that make the laws are directly accountable to us. I've always thought that immigration was an issue that needed handling with care and with sensitivity. I cannot see how any of that platform, I mean, I'm painted out as this crazed radical. I actually think about it, they're quite traditional points of view.
I think maybe that's more to do with the kind of company perhaps you kept in the US. For instance, Roy Moore, Steve Bannon. These are people with quite radical views.
But no. I mean, look, I'm a radical in the sense I want change. So in the proper Oxford English Dictionary definition of the word, I've been a radical because I've wanted the ship of state to turn around here by 180 degrees. Yeah, Steve is a radical, absolutely, and is unafraid to say what he thinks. I met Roy Moore once. When you do things in life, you do get some things wrong.
Roy Moore was a mistake.
Looks like it, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And that, as I say, you make snap decisions. You say, yep, I'll do this, and you're bound to get some things wrong.
When was it you realised Roy Moore was a mistake? Was it the sexual assault claims, or was it his comments on segregation? Or
this Roy Moore thing. A load of people contacted me. Would I go and support him? Blah 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 blah. At the last minute, I decided to. I should have thought about the whole thing far more deeply than I did, and it was a mistake. Hands up, it happens.
What about Steve Bannon? Was that a mistake?
No, I've known Steve a long time. He is
before the Trump era.
Yeah, I've known Steve for a long time. And Steve makes mistakes, says things he shouldn't say. I mean, but is Steve a clear thinker about politics, about direction, about where things are going? Is he good at analysing things that are happening within economies, etc.? Yeah, and I think with Steve, you get somebody who's working class background is a very big part of who he is.
I mean, he is a white nationalist, am I right?
Well, I've never heard him say anything disobliging against black people. I've never heard any of it. Is he a nationalist? Yeah, of course he is. is he, I'm a nationalist. I believe in the nation state. He would define himself as a nationalist. He happens to be white. But the idea that Steve is some sort of white supremacist, I've never seen any evidence of any of that.
How often do you meet Steve, out of interest?
Well, over the past, I've met him many times.
Yeah, recently?
Only not much recently. I was in DC, bumped into him, but maybe once this year or so. Not that,
I'd be interested in what because he's obviously left the administration now. So
yeah, he has. But Steve said some things. Again, people who, it's very easy to make no mistakes in life. Just do nothing. Get a public sector job, work 9 to 5, do nothing. But when you're out there, if you're an entrepreneur in business or politics or whatever it is, you're going to get some things very right and some things not so right.
You're talking about Steve's mistakes now rather than yours.
I'm talking in general about people who go out and do stuff. All of us who take an entrepreneurial approach to politics, all of us get things right and get things wrong.
Do you think you've made any other mistakes? Because I was going to ask you about whether you had any regrets, other than backing Roy Moore.
Well, I mean, listen, that is about a sort of 0.0001% of my last 25 years.
Sure. But to be fair, it's the last 2 years where you have had this monumental profile, worldwide, not just in the UK.
That is true. That is true. Oh, do I have... You know, again, it depends how you're made as people. If you look back too much, you ain't going forward very quickly. So I don't look back too much.
I'm interested in your scorecard on how you would rate Trump's first, and I wrote this down, I believe it is 1 year and 94 days in office. What would you give him? Oh,
he's doing okay. He really is doing okay. I think on foreign policy, in terms of America's position in the world, then it's a big 8. It's a big 8 out of 10.
8 out of 10.
Yeah, because I think, look, you know, I think what's happening with Korea, North Korea, I think persuading China to actually put the screws on when it comes to sanctions and everything, I think that's been very, very important. And I think generally, the way that he's carried himself has stunned people.
In foreign policy?
His physical presence.
Right.
You know, he gets off an aeroplane in Beijing or in Riyadh or whatever it is, and I think everyone thought, oh, it's going to be a disaster. But actually, it hasn't been a disaster. He has raised America's profile in the world, and he's not been afraid to say some tough things, which he did in Riyadh. Said some quite tough things, and hey, do you know what? There's now some real reform going on in that country. So I think he's done very well. So I think foreign policy has been very, very good. Domestic policy has been very difficult. There are some big wins. Clearly, tax reform is a very big win. Deregulation coming through various parts of the economy with supply-side reform, probably the biggest unspoken win, you know, in terms of what it's doing for growth in the American economy. So they're all real positives. You know, the negatives have been just getting tied down with, you know, a media that hate him, although, you know, you could argue he hasn't tried too hard with them, I suppose.
No, that's probably
it's been very confrontational, but good for business. I mean, great for all you lot. I mean, it'd never be a better time. Yeah, he's been bogged down a bit with Mueller and this endless Russia stuff, and that's been very, very difficult. You know, I am very thoughtful about the James Comey stuff, you know, and I do understand that when you've got somebody there that's leaking, and you know they're leaking, your instinct is just to get rid of them. But it just might have been better, sort of keep him inside the tent rather than put him outside the tent. It's just a thought that I've got, perhaps on something that he could have done differently. But again, I mean, here's a guy that is out there, you know, every day, whether it's on Twitter or saying stuff, and you know, he's obviously going to walk into 1 or 2 storms along the way. But generally, no, it's been pretty good.
Did you see him when you were last in Washington?
Yes. No, time before.
Okay.
CPAC.
CPAC, yeah. How did you have lunch or just pop?
I met him. We sat down. We had a chat about things. He was on top form.
Yeah.
He was on good form. Yeah, I think he's kind of got used to being president. He likes it. He wants to run again.
Really? Because there's a lot of speculation that he won't run again.
Yeah, I know. I sense that he will.
Yeah.
I mean, look, none of us know what's going to happen.
No.
You know, politics being what it is. But I think, provided the American economy is on course and continues as it is, perhaps even improves from where it is, then I think you're running it.
Interesting you mentioned Syria before, because of course Trump and Macron now have looked like they are taking a more robust policy to that conflict. But you mentioned that you wouldn't be in favour of...
I'm worried about that.
Yeah?
Look, you know, ISIS have used chemical weapons, are reported 52 times. The door is now open for ISIS to actually provide a feint, fire a couple of shells with chlorine gas in them, and goodness knows where we're going to be. So I'm concerned about it.
Chlorine gas, so you think they were responsible for the attacks in Ghouta?
No, I didn't say that. But I said now, look, we've done what we've done. We've said, the American administration have said locked and loaded. France and the United Kingdom are ready to go again. I just, you know, I'm slightly concerned about that.
Do you think that the Russian intervention has been a positive force in Syria?
It's a really good question. And that depends whether you're looking at this, it depends which level you're looking at this on. I do take the view that extreme Islamic fundamentalism in the shape of ISIS is the great threat that we face looking ahead to the decades to come, and to see them being militarily beaten in the way that they are. It's not quite over, but it's almost over in Syria. Wouldn't have happened without the Russians. So I just think to myself, we've always had big differences, but I think we would have done better.
I mean, as you know,
We'd have done better to recognise that there are some big issues on which we have a shared interest with Russia. Instead, our foreign policy approach to Russia has been very confrontational. The desire of the European Union to expand, to take in the Ukraine, the implication that NATO membership would come with it, are things that have not helped this relationship. Now, that does not mean I like Mr. Putin, does not mean I'm going to buy an apartment in Moscow, or any of those things. Excuse me, but I'm not sure we've handled it very intelligently.
The Mueller investigation is obviously something that has very much gripped our readers. They're very interested in it. What's your feeling about it?
I think it's going nowhere. I mean, how long has it been going on now? I think it's going absolutely nowhere. And I think it's a bit like Brexit, really, isn't it? There's quite a lot of people in DC just cannot accept the result that happened on November the 8th, 2016, and are hanging on and praying that something will come out of the sky that will bring the president down, and you can press the reset button and start again. I don't think it's going to happen, but I think it's all been pretty wearing.
Have you been contacted by anyone on Miller's team?
No, why?
About your links with the Trump campaign? Maybe you might know something, or they might think you know something.
No.
Because of course there was also these stories about the Russian influence in the Brexit campaign.
Just laughable.
Yeah.
The Zinoviev letter, 1924. Look it up. You know, it was said that Labour won because of this intervention, and it proved to be a hoax, and so it will again.
Do you think Putin is a force for good in the world?
I think he's a very questionable human being. You know, morally and in many other ways, very, very questionable. You know, I would not take him home on a Sunday afternoon to meet mum for a cup of tea. You know, but I think Russia is a strange country. I think our understanding of it is very limited. I think we underestimate how much more frightened of us they are. We underestimate that, and that's why this whole strategic idea of encroaching on their borders through the Ukraine, which if you think about it, really is what kicked off this whole new Cold War that we're in. I think we've misread it, and that we've misjudged it. So no, I can't call him a force for good. I can say he's a clever political operator and manipulator. Clearly he is. But I can't call him a force for good. But when it comes to ISIS, I mean, what do we want to do? Do we really want to escalate this? I would have thought, actually, that's not really in our interests.
But when you've got a leader using chemical weapons on his own people, it's difficult to justify not doing anything, right?
Well, it was a red line, wasn't it, that was put down by Obama, and a red line that didn't get followed up. Yeah, chemical weapons are horrible, but then heavy, high explosive artillery shells are pretty horrible too, you know.
I think we should step away from geopolitics for a second, and I would like to ask you about Fox News and your...
Yeah.
I mean, I have to confess, I'm not entirely sure how often you appear, but you're on some sort of contract. I'm not sure how.
A couple of times a week normally.
Right.
Depends. If there's a big story where, you know, Brussels or London is very heavily in the news, it'll be more than that.
Oh, so they're asking you more to comment on Europe rather than on you know, American politics.
Yeah, it's to get it's to put into American news shows perspectives on stories that are happening elsewhere and that are of interest to them. In turn, you know, they will also ask questions. Well, how do you in the UK view this that's happening in America, or how does Brussels view what's happening? So yeah, you know, have I been asked in the last 24 hours about Macron's visit? I have. So that's the kind of way in which it works, and I'm very happy to do it.
How do you think they see the UK over there?
I think that right now, I think I genuinely, I mean, if we're talking about Fox News and their audience, I think they see a very, very weak, insipid Prime Minister, and a country that has made this historic decision to change course and hasn't done anything about it. You
mentioned, I think, to the BBC, maybe a couple of years ago now, you said you were I can't remember now, 53 single and skin or something. It's been a year now. What are you up to now? What's next for you?
So, do you know, actually, it's funny. I'm not leading a political party, but I'm still incredibly busy. I'm still leading a group in the European Parliament, so I'm back and forth to Brussels and Strasbourg, fairly regularly. Most weeks, I'm spending a couple of days there. I've just done this tour in the States, as I said to you. I'm a Fox News contributor. I'm doing a lot of talk radio. I've been doing LBC Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday nights, and a 2-hour show on Sunday morning. And I've been to Prague, and I've been to various parts of Europe giving speeches about the future of Europe with political parties that I'm, aligned to. I'm not aligned to all the rebel movement, but I'm aligned to some of them. So kind of life's pretty busy. Pretty busy. Plus also, I still do a reasonable amount of UK normal news media, whether it's, breakfast television with Piers Morgan or whatever it may be. So, yeah, life is busy. And without life is busy, but without the responsibility and the pressures of running an organisation, which I did for years, where you are responsible for what somebody else says or does every single day, and not having to do that is a massive relief.
So you see your future, where's Nigel Farage, a couple of years from now? You're pundit?
I really, and no one believes this, but I really don't know. I've travelled optimistically, see what happens. Look, if they drop the ball on Brexit, if it doesn't happen, or they decide, actually, we're going to suspend Article 50 for a further couple of years, or the conclusion of it for a couple of years, then I would have no hesitation but to throw myself back into full-time campaigning right across the length and breadth of the United Kingdom. I would love doing it again. Being out on the road I would enjoy, because I love that stuff, that genuine, not false, but genuine public interaction and all that comes with it. I think I'm reasonably good at it. So I'd be very happy to go and do that again. But I'd rather not have to.
Right.
I'd rather think we'd fought that and we'd won and it's now time to move on. My sense of it right now is that we will leave on the 29th of March next year. I just think, the only way we don't leave is if the Labour Party decide, with a few Tory rebels, that they will oppose, ultimately, the deal. And I think for Corbyn, that's the end. 4.5 million Brexit voters who voted for Corbyn, exactly a year later, he can't afford to be seen to be betraying them. So I think we'll leave, probably on terrible terms, and probably wrapped up in a whole series of arrangements that mean we can't actually get the benefit out of Brexit that I'd hoped we would. But I think we're going to leave, and in terms of the big historic, view of this period of time, leaving the Treaty of Rome is the big one. So I think we're, albeit not led very well, we're not going to sprint over the line. We will hobble over with a broken leg and 2 crutches, but I think we're going to get over.
And broadening that a little to Europe, obviously Le Pen, who you initially supported,
I've never supported Le Pen. I've never supported the Front National. I've never sat with them in the European Parliament. I've never, ever supported them. And I certainly would never have supported them under the leadership of Jean-Marie Le Pen. But in my second round in France, I said, yeah, I'd vote for her. And of course, the choice of 2.
Yeah, so what I mean is in Europe, is that trend, that anti-globalist trend, is that continuing, or did Macron and Merkel's re-election deal a bit of a blow to it?
Oh, well, Merkel's re-election, look, she's a hugely weakened figure. And we now have the AFD,
second largest,
who it's difficult sometimes, and I've got friends in the AFD who I like and I respect, and they're very, very brilliant, thoughtful people. And there are other bits of the AFD you think, all right, okay, how does this all fit together? How does it all work? And they've had one split, then another split, so it's quite complicated. It's quite difficult to put your finger exactly on what the AFD is at the moment, but it's a voice of opposition to the European project. It's now the second biggest party in Germany. Who would have believed that 5 years ago? As far as France is concerned, well, I thought Marine Le Pen was on course to get 40, 41, 42%, but the debate blew it for her. And that's why I said to you earlier, Macron's a clever operator. He's actually rather good. He psyched her out of that debate with gamesmanship beforehand. He did it very, very well. But Euroscepticism is still very much alive in France. You have Mélenchon, who's very much on the sort of hard left of politics, but taking a very sort of Tony Benn type principled position on European Union membership. And you've got the Front National, and about 3 other little Eurosceptic parties. So no. Italy, dramatic change in Italy. And it is a very dramatic change. I mean, when a stand-up comedian wins the election, you've got to ask yourself what's going on here. So obviously 5-star, which is really, above all, the 5-star vote is a cry for change. And then, of course, the Northern League, or now rebranded as the League, doing well. Salvini emerging as quite a strong political figure. Look at Swedish politics. Again, the Swedish Democrats from, pretty dodgy roots, to say the very least, shot to the top of the polls. They're now back a bit. Why? Because the rest of the establishment is now taking on their agenda. The same thing happened in the Netherlands last year. So no, I think this move towards the nation state being that's essentially it. The nation state is the building block, and we will work with, trade with, and cooperate with our neighbours and have a partnership in that sense, but not a full political union. That'll continue, and I frankly think that the Macron-Juncker agenda, which is to complete the Army, Navy and Air Force by 2025, to have a foreign policy without veto, which means you could say, no, I'm against this, but you're still involved in a war the European Union has started, and more centralisation of powers. They haven't learnt the lesson of Brexit. I mean, there would have been no Brexit if Cameron had been given a decent renegotiation. There would have been no Brexit. And despite that, they haven't learned.
You're not concerned about the fascist elements to a lot of those parties, and also, we saw in Georgia just last week there were neo-Nazis marching in the streets. I mean, you don't feel that Trump and Brexit and
I'm very concerned. I'm very concerned that the euro has brought neo-Nazism back. Absolutely. Golden Dawn only happened because Greece is in the euro. And here's the irony, that a project that was set up to stop the extremes of nationalism actually is causing it, because it's taking away from people their ability excuse me, to influence their own futures.
And what about in America then? That rise of kind of neo-Nazi groups and so on?
I just think they've always been there.
Yeah.
I suspect they're smaller now than they were 50 years ago. Should we be worried about them? A bit. Should we be really worried about them? There's just not enough of them. Just not enough of them. You're always going to get nutters on either end of the political systems, we have to be aware of we have these groups here. We've had murder committed in the streets here, but so we have to be aware of these groups, not complacent about these groups. But I think to try and say they're a real, genuine threat is a huge mistake. But you may well see worse yet, not in America, but within the European project. I mean, if you were a Catalan right now that supported separation and independence of Catalonia, and you saw your leaders facing the prospect of 30 years in jail, even the police chief now going to trial for sedition, you have to wonder what that cocktail of events may do to people's behaviour.
Just my last question then. When Trump comes over in July, have you got any plans to meet him?
Frankly, that is the only unfair question you've asked me. You've asked me some difficult questions, which is quite right and proper. But I found out about it an hour ago. I mean, do me a favour.
Well, let me rephrase it then. If you could meet him, what would you want to say to him?
Welcome and ignore Sadiq Khan and John Bercow and all the virtue signallers. We're very pleased to see you here. And nice, for a change, to have an American president that actually likes our country.